Hold on. So you about to go live now? Okay, everyone put your cameras on. He's pushing it out now. Mm.
90 seconds for the website.
They said 90 second. He said 90-second countdown.
Okay.
So are we good? Can y'all hear me now? Good. Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Coming Out of the Cave, hosted by the Renaissance Christian Counseling Center of the Morning Star Baptist Church. This evening, we'll be having a conversation that will talk about some topics around men's mental health. And we have two special guests joining us today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. We have Brandon Johnson and Cal Berkeley. And my name is Tavon Myers. I am a counselor at the Renaissance Christian Center, and we thank you for joining us tonight. So just by way of introduction, Brandon, you can go first, and then we'll give a little bit of background on who you are, and then Cal, you can go, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure. Thanks, first of all, for having me on tonight. Definitely excited to be here. I'm Brandon Johnson. I work at the Department of Health and Human Services, particularly in the suicide prevention branch. And so I work on suicide prevention activities across the country. We provide grants to states and tribal territories and other healthcare systems. And so I work to oversee the funding that we give out. Also, particularly, I work on a couple of different initiatives, one around Black youth suicide, another one in working with faith communities to get them better equipped to deal with the issue of suicide prevention. On top of that, on my personal time, I also have a YouTube page called the Black Mental Wellness Lounge, where I talk about all things centered around Black mental health, different issues, bringing on guests, etc. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Brandon.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Berkeley. I'm a mental health therapist at Healthcare for the Homeless. I'm also at Crisis Response in Arundel County. I'm an author of a book called The Wake. It focuses on gentrification and family secrets. I'm an elected member of the State Central Committee, and I'm a published researcher, a PhD. My dissertation was on the experiences of medical providers that work with clients diagnosed with mental illness and HIV.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Nice to meet you both as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to have a good conversation around men's mental health. I know that's a conversation that is yet to be had to some degree. But we're going to jump into some questions. And one of the questions, what are some symptoms of depression that men may deal with versus women? I know there's talk around, the pandemic. There are things going on in people's lives, unemployment, the state of our country, and everybody handles situations differently than others. Some may, be a little stronger in certain areas, but you have some people who succumb just by hearing certain information. Brandon, if you could tell me a little bit about, your perception on that. What are some symptoms of depression that men deal with differently than women?
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, there's a lot of misconception that men don't deal with depression, right? But that's not true. So we actually deal with depression and have depressive symptoms. I think a big one that when you talk about the differences about it, I think a big one is around irritability and anger. And so where women are more likely to do what we call internalizing behaviors. So, feeling down, feeling depressed, not wanting to get out of bed. As men, we oftentimes exhibit more externalizing behaviors. So we're talking about things like being quick to get angry, like little things making us feel more stressed and kind of blowing up because it may not be the root issue that's causing the stress and the depression, but we may lash out at other things that are giving us stress. And so anger and irritability are some really big ones. And so if you're thinking about a lot of different things. It could be financial things that you're dealing with, relationship things. And then all of a sudden, like everything else around it feels heavier. Everything else around it is just compounded in. And so you may be quick to respond out of anger versus women. Not to say that women don't, but they're less likely to exhibit their depressive symptoms in that way.
Absolutely. Kyle, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just want to add in some other symptoms that men typically feel. In addition to anger, is guilt, apathy, loss of interest, sleeping in late, and weight loss, like insomnia as well. Those are a lot of things that a lot of men feel and exhibit when dealing with depression.
Absolutely. I know, take it a step further, I know there's a loss of interest in things that normally would bring one pleasure. Some of the activities are less likely to be visited at the time. You have, depression. It occurs only, people think it only occurs every now and then, but depression could be something that is lingering, it's ongoing, and different matters or different events can really, kind of activate it and trigger those particular feelings and emotions and so forth. But you talked about something, anger, and that's a topic as well when it comes to men and we are seemingly projected to be aggressive in our behavior or our speech when certain things take place. So, what would you tell the brothers that are listening now when they get angry, when they feel those manic episodes coming on? How could they kind of, handle those a little better? How can they de-escalate? Any suggestions for them? And Kyle, we can go to you for this.
Well, just exploring where's the anger coming from. Is it there's something that triggers it, right? As far as the anger, right? So we live in a city that has a very, very high murder rate. It's been in the 300s since 2016, if I'm not mistaken. 2016, 318 murders. 2017, 342 murders. 2018, 309. 2019, 348, and we're on par for another 300 murder year, even in the middle of a pandemic. So the murder rate is that what's triggering the anger. We live in areas with poor food security, right? So we have tons of food deserts here in Baltimore. So providing for your family, providing for your children, that's another thing that could possibly trigger anger, right? Add into that the vacant home effect, which is education. There's so many other things that can contribute to anger, on top of broken homes, broken families, and those things have an impact on how you process, how you filter, and how you just deal with things from day to day. So, what's the root cause is the first thing I look at when I look at somebody that's going through so many affects of anger.
Absolutely. Brandon, you want to tag in?
Yeah, I think what Dr. Kyle brought up was really, really, really important in kind of figuring out where this is stemming from. And I think also to figure out a plan to address it. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is around active coping. So once you figure out what is the thing that's triggering the anger, active coping is how do I find something that I can get to, that I can access, that I have the ability to pull into my space to help me to feel less angry. So for men, a lot of it is it's physical, right? So like exercising and like going for a walk, going on a run, exerting some type of physical activity oftentimes helps us to feel better, as opposed to what it may do for women. Again, they may have some effects with it, but we've seen research that says that us being able to get our hands on something, to build something, to fix something, um, to engage in some type of exercise, going to the gym, that those things can help us to calm down with the anger. I mean, obviously, to Dr. Kyle's point, you're going to want to figure out a long term plan of dealing with that anger. But having some active coping skills that we can use to address in the moment can be helpful. And sometimes it's not always physical. It can be, watching a lighthearted movie. It can be picking up a book. It can be journaling. And we think as men, like, we don't, that's not something that we do, but it is something that can be helpful. We can figure out like what's making me upset, and then having a plan for dealing with it when it comes up.
I've worked with somebody who has anger issues, and he's found a good self-care coping mechanism being fishing, and that has helped out tremendously. And even with what's going on with a lot of restrictions with the coronavirus, he could still go fishing without any kind of a hang up. And I fish myself, and I can tell you it's some real good self-care, and without even meaning to, it's some good meditation. So yeah.
Absolutely. So it's interesting, talking about coping with those symptoms and those behaviors. I think it's important to also recognize, as you said, the root cause of them. But we're going back to the conversation of depression and anger. There's a lot of anxiety that comes along just with being a man, feeling like we have to carry the weight and that we have to fix everything and everything has to be perfect to some degree. And so you mentioned being in a pandemic at this moment, and there are some people probably listening right now who are not able to do the things they used to do because they're unemployed, because the finances are not there. They may feel less adequate than what they normally are. So they may experience a loss of interest or don't have pleasure in activities or have some agitation. So with that being said, what is some advice we can share with those brothers now that are struggling with their own identity now because of this pandemic and epidemic that we're in? What would you say to them, Brandy?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, just acknowledging the fact that this is a tough season, right? Like, this can be a tough season. I think first and foremost, um, is acknowledging how you feel. A lot of what we do as men is that we can, we talk a lot about what other people do and say with us, but first we have to validate ourselves. So, like, if I'm feeling stressed due to COVID, my way of life has changed. I'm in the house more. I can't go out and do, the things that make me happy. Like, if you are going to the gym looks different. It's been closed for a while. Some of them are open, but the guidelines look different. It's okay to say that that's stressful. It's okay to be frustrated by that. It's okay for that to be an issue. So I say first things first, you know, have your feelings and allow them to be valid. And I think too, some of it is recreating and reframing the space that we're in. So things have to be done differently. We've lost a lot of things that we're used to doing. I think part of it is figuring out and kind of relearning ourselves of, what perhaps didn't I have the opportunity to do before this time has come up? And what can I shift to? Right. So if I can't do this one thing anymore, whether it be going into the gym, like, now I can, just do exercises on the YouTube. So maybe you're like doing stuff. There's constant, like, I'm exposed to this whole world. My wife is a gym rat. Like, she loves working out. That's not my world. And so, but watching like all this free content out there. So maybe your brother may be at home and just say, now I got access to this all the time. I can't make the excuse of I don't feel like getting in the car to work out. Like, I can do it right here. Or maybe now I don't even need the extra monthly cost of the gym. I can do this stuff on YouTube, do what I need, and now I can potentially save money. So, like, reframing and trying to, even in the darkest of times, trying to find some, positive light to do that. And I think also talking and sharing with other brothers. Like, that's something that I encourage brothers to do, because you're not the only one that feels it. And so often we feel like I can't say anything to this person or that person. You'll have a group of 10 men sitting together. They all feeling the same thing and nobody's gonna talk about it. Like, nobody's gonna mention it, but they all dealing with the same thing, right? So it's like part of it is like, if one person can take that little bit of courage quickly. Man, we have different ways of talking and bringing stuff up. You can bring it up in a joke. You can bring it up however, and then another person catches it, and now this whole conversation that's opened up, and you might get some feedback from another brother that can tell you how to do it, how they're working through it, and it may be something that helps you. So those would be some of the things that I would mention specifically for that.
Kyle, you want to add anything to that?
I just want to add in. Brandon was basically saying safe spaces to talk about issues. I recently had somebody send me something where Dave Chappelle did a stand up, and I was with a couple of brothers. We was watching it together. We got to laughing, and we wound up having issues group, like unbeknownst to us, and we're like really reflecting on something that's affecting us that he mentioned in a joke. And it's as men, we really need to get to a safe space where we could be comfortable talking about certain things amongst each other. It's funny how we could talk about politics, we could talk about some issues that's happening at work, but we're guarded in some areas around things that's happening in our personal lives. Like there are many people, for whatever reason, COVID has brought out some challenges, like let's say like divorce and separation. I don't know why, but some people it was cool going to work and coming home for years on end, and then when you're stuck home for like 60 days, issues came up. I don't know why, but it did, right? And this is a norm that I'm seeing at crisis response. So just really get into a place of, hey, look, this is an issue that's going on here, and like discuss those things. I have a barbershop I've been going to for years, and we actually talk about marital issues there. And it's a safe place. And I think a lot of times just having an ally comes in handy.
So, what do you say to those brothers who may not go to the barbershop or who may not have that ally or that those trusted homeboys or brothers that they can talk to? What's the answer that we can give them?
I'm a huge proponent for saying reach out to a therapist or a counselor.
I'm with it. I'm with it.
That's a good scapegoat.
I am really
Absolutely.
big on saying that. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, somebody who's gone through a lot of grief in the past. I lost my father 2 years ago, and I saw a grief counselor, and I could tell you that was one of the best things in the world that could have happened to me. I'm still very appreciative to my counselor, helping through that process, because my dad and I, we were super tight, and you know my dad was really into sports. Like he was a former boxer, and he was a baseball player, and he was a man's man, and he we watched every sport together. Like baseball, we watched every game together. Football, it didn't matter. Like every boxing match, and even if we're not face to face, we're on the phone. So him not being there was rough. So you could just imagine when everything was shut down, and then they brought all the sports back together. You could watch basketball, and you could watch baseball and football all at the same time. Like, it's a flood of emotions, right? Like
Hmm.
you're stuck home. So what are you doing with all those emotions, right? Like you can't take it out on your family. So again, therapy is a big piece. Counseling is a big piece. You have to have some kind of way to release those emotions in a safe space.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a great point. That's exactly where I would go with it. But I do like want to make that, make that connection right there too for, in case there's a brother watching this. Like, Dr. Kyle is a doctor and a therapist. And, he talked about having that time where he needed to go. Like I work in mental health. I'm not a licensed clinician. I work on the public health side of things, but I have a therapist and I go and we meet regularly. It's no weakness, it's no, challenge for you. It's not a assault to your manhood if you go out and reach out and find a therapist. Like there's so much that you can learn and get to if you just take the couple of steps to, even as you let the trust and the rapport build, to just let out a couple of things. Like it's life shifting. Like it can really be life shifting because there are things that you kind of think about yourself and things that you do that you probably don't even know. There are things that ways that you respond that you probably don't even recognize, but those are things that can come out in therapy. So if you don't have that group of brothers, do that. If you go to the church connecting to men's ministry, there are other brothers there that are like-minded there, or if you're younger, the young adult ministry. But getting connected to those groups, like there are some safe spaces where you're able to connect to. And then if not, definitely, I think, you know brother Kyle's probably in agreement with me. I think everybody should have a therapist, counselor somewhere. I think that's across the board, but especially right now, like there's virtual therapy options. Like, there's so much that we can get from this, and so I definitely would encourage that as well.
Absolutely. And for those who are looking for counselors, we do have counselors available for you right now at the Renaissance Christian Center. And you definitely can call us at 410-409-0025. Again, that's 410-409-0025. And someone will be standing there waiting to have that conversation with you and connect you with the counselor. So please reach out. Um, but as we further the discussion, we start off with depression. That was anger. And for many people with depression and symptoms, they usually are severe enough to cause some noticeable problems in the day-to-day activity. So, you have work, you have school, you have social activities, relationships with others, and some people may feel generally miserable or unhappy without really knowing why, and that can lead to some thoughts that may resonate, such as suicide, and suicide and really ready to check out. So, I know, Brandon, you say you specialize in that area and you do a lot around suicide prevention. So let's talk a little bit about suicide. I know it's something that's been happening. We're entering into the holiday season. So some people go through seasonal depression. And some people, experience loss this year. And we all know that Thanksgiving is coming up and it's definitely going to look totally different. And Christmas is right around the corner. So what do you want to say about to those who may be contemplating suicide or dealing with the changes that they're experiencing, that they're dealing with suicide ideation?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to deal with and a tough thing to experience. But more often than not, I mean, we have a lot of people who, at some point in their lifetime do, consider that or have a thought about it. I definitely just want to say, like, there are so many supports that are out there if you are, thinking about that or considering, harming yourself. There's so many supports out there to help you, and I'll drop a couple here as well. So first, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, is a 24/7, 365 number for anybody if you're thinking about harming yourself and you want to connect with them. Their number is 1-800-273-TALK. So 1-800-273-8255. So if you're thinking about, harming yourself and do you want to connect to someone who can talk you, uh, through some of the things that you're dealing with, I would definitely say connect to them. Sometimes, some points, it's tough to do that over the phone. It's tough to sit and have a conversation and talk about those things. Those things can be heavy, and so if you're like, I don't know if I want, like, I have family in the house, like, I don't know if I want to talk through that, then that's totally fine as well. There is the crisis text line that is also 24/7, 365, trained crisis counselors who are there to help as well. And so if you text the word home to 741-741, and that number again is 741-741, you'll receive a text from a crisis counselor and you're able to start excuse me, that conversation to help with those things as well. Going to therapy helps as well, and so we talk a lot too about, the depressive symptoms and things. Those things can help as well, like, doing that physical activity, finding someone else to talk to, having a just one trusted adult relationship for anybody, whether you're young, whether you're old, can be greatly impactful to helping to alleviate thoughts of suicide. Um, but those supports are there if you're dealing with grief and loss. For Berta's house, I don't know their number off the top of my head, but if you Google them, they're there as well. And so there's so many different ways and so many supports. And I think, for men, if we don't address and deal with the anxiety, if we don't deal with the depression, it can lead into those things, and a number of things can trigger it. It's a hard space that we live in. There's, relationship things, as Kyle said. There's, financial things. Like, there are all sorts of things that can bring those feelings out, but there are supports there. Like, we need you here. Somebody needs you here. Somebody desires you to give it another shot, give it another try. Go for it another day. Give the opportunity for things to get better. And so we want to, um, help you all through that because there are so many people who want you here and so many people who have the skills and the resources to help you get there.
Absolutely. Kyle, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add on, along with suicide, just looking out for self-harming behaviors, um, promiscuous sexual behavior, increased substance abuse or increased alcohol usage. Like, definitely looking out for those things as well, because those are definitely ways that people try to cope with their depression or anxiety type behaviors.
Absolutely. Um, Whenever pressure comes, and just as being a male, the first thing we try to do is figure out how, why, how can we fix it, can it be fixed, etc. We take matters into our own hand, and sometimes we become our own worst enemy. Our thought patterns change. We try to think of the best solutions to remedy a situation when sometimes the best solution is reaching out for help. So we encourage you to reach out to somebody tonight and ask for that help, ask for that guidance. It doesn't make you weak because you need help. I know we all grew up with, being strong and men don't cry and be tough and all that and all those myths that do not work. So we want to make sure that we are, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel. It's okay to cry. It's okay to reach out for help. That's why these supports are here. That's why we're here tonight to encourage you to reach out to us and have those conversations, because that one decision of making that phone call can change your whole life. That one conversation with a counselor can change your whole situation. Sometimes you need another perspective on a matter instead of taking matters into your own hands. So we encourage you to do that tonight. When we think about suicide, and there are people that have experienced it, especially during the pandemic, where people have just, given up or have actually family members are hurting tonight because of a loved one has made that decision early on this year. And I know Brandon gave us some great resources for those families too to reach out as well. But those who are dealing with grief, everybody handles grief differently. We know that there are 5 to 7 stages of different griefs that people experience. So for those who are grieving, Kyle, what can you say to those families or those brothers who are grieving tonight that can help them?
Like you mentioned earlier, there's 7 stages of grief. I'm going to rattle some off the top of my head: anger, denial, acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't put me on the spot. but no, being completely honest, grief is a tough thing, and I'm gonna tell you what my counselor told me. It hits you in waves, right? So for a while, I actually used to work for Roberta's house. I did grief therapy there, and my client population was family members that lost their loved one due to a homicide, and every family member I wound up saying the same thing, right? And the same thing was, can you tell me what strong is? Nobody, the whole time I worked there, even now working crisis part-time, still nobody can answer that question, right? What is strong? But everybody goes through the same process of they're holding back tears. They're alienating themselves from the support when the support is there, right? And when when the collective time for grieving has passed, meaning like, when the grief is new, like when the loved one is freshly gone, when those people are scattered and going on about their life, and you're coming around the holiday season and that loved one's birthday, and that person was a veteran, all these other times like Memorial Day, Labor Day, so on and so forth, and family functions, you're grieving by yourself. And then you're hitting all these emotions all over again. You're going through your anger stage, your reasoning, you're going through reasoning, and so on and so forth. And it's beating you down. Like, definitely take the time in that moment, A, to deal with your support system that's there to help grieve with you. It's okay to cry with your family and your loved ones. But B, when those feelings are still there, and it's normal for those feelings to still be there. I really want to stress this enough, a lot. It's okay for those feelings to still be there. Take the next step and seek counseling. Like, talk to somebody else about those things, because sometimes talking to a family member isn't just enough, because your family's going to say yes, you know what I mean, going to agree with a lot of what you're feeling, but you want to talk to somebody that's going to talk you through those feelings, right? And want to really help verbalize and really put into like a lot of action and understanding of what these feelings are, and give you tools to actually cope with this and live with this feeling, because losing a loved one is one of the hardest things you could ever do. And again, 300 plus murders a year, that's real. Losing a loved one from high blood pressure, cancer, HIV/AIDS, now COVID, all these things. These things are real, right? And you have to unpack this. You're living with this, and being home and trying to unpack this at home by yourself. It's not easy. It's not easy, and it's next to impossible to do by yourself. And it's not a measure of strength when you do it by yourself. It does more damage than good.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Brandon, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle hit the nail on the head. It's grief is a lifelong process. Like it's a lifelong process, especially when it's a close family member or friend. It takes a while to do that. It's okay to be fine for a while and then feel like now's the time I need help. Like I didn't need it before, or again, we invalidate our feelings in saying like, why does this bother me now? Like that was a whole year ago. Like, why is this coming back up? And as Kyle said, those milestones will bring those back up. You got holidays coming back up, birthdays, anniversaries, anniversary of the death, like those things can re-elicit those responses. And so there may be certain times as you kind of notice your trends that you need to reach out, more than others. Like it may be the person's birthday, maybe collaborating and connecting with friends and family during that time so you can, share pleasant memories or kind of, rely on people during that time. It depends, and it's so different from every person, for every person, going through that grief process. So figuring out when it's more difficult for you, when those times bring up and elicit different feelings and responses, and kind of figure out when you kind of need more help. And as Kyle said, a grief counselor is a great person to help you figure out how to manage that over a long period of time.
Absolutely. It's interesting as we're talking about this, and what comes to mind is that many times it comes up when it comes to asking for help and going to counseling. There's that stigma that is attached to it, and I believe there's a question in the chat that said, "How do we get over the stigma of asking for help as a man?" So, Brandon, you smiling the most, so I think you want this one.
No, I mean it's one of those things, and the reason I started smiling is because it seems like something that shouldn't even have a stigma because we all know the things that we're dealing with, right? Like as a man, we can talk about the things that, like we understand like there's pressure. Like we can always say like, I'm a man, like I gotta do this, like I gotta do this, I gotta handle this. Um, but then we never want to admit the weight when it's time to figure out that we need to do something about it. It's just kind of like we just take it as we are supposed to have this burden, and that's just life. Like there's nothing that we can do about it. I think when we get to a point of realizing one, we're not by ourselves, other men are dealing with the same thing, and two, that we don't have to feel that way, that's when we can start to break down some of that stigma. You don't have to feel upset or overwhelmed all the time about life. Everybody has challenges and things that we have to do. I know, brother Kyle and myself, like we're both dads, we're both husbands. Like those do carry weight. Like there are things that you have to do, responsibilities and things that fall into your lap that you're supposed to be able to handle. That is totally a part of it. But I don't have to feel miserable while I'm doing it. Like that is not a part of it. That is a one for one. Like you're a husband, you're going to be stressed out all the time. You're a dad, you're going to be stressed out. Like finances are going to stress you out. Relationship issues are going to stress you out. Child rearing is going to stress you out. There are going to be times where those things are frustrating. Absolutely. You're going to deal with those, but to know that the overwhelming sense of pain and frustration and this existential dread in a sense of like this is always going to feel like this. I can't talk to anybody about it. This is just the weight of a man. Let me just carry it and just be upset and depressed for most of my life. You don't have to. There are ways to, you can feel better. You can, feel differently about it. You can, feel like, think about, being a husband, being a man, and all the responsibilities, and a smile come over your face. Like those things are possible, but they start with reaching out when you don't feel that way, when it doesn't feel that easy, or when you can't see or remember the last time you felt happy. Those are the times that we want you to reach out, that you can get to the process of having that feel better. And I think a lot of it for us as men too, like Um, there's a number of reasons I could talk about this, but for us, like there's a badge in how much we're able to carry, right? Like we've been through this, we got, this trauma experience, we didn't lost this, I had to walk 15 miles to school, I done lost this person, like been stressed out my whole life, like, and we wear that as if like, you know, that's the best thing ever. We all, we go through stuff and it's difficult to deal with, but we don't have to be weighed down by it our entire lives if we reach out and connect. And I think every human, man or woman, wants to feel good innately. And I feel like if we embrace the searching for feeling good, more often than not, we'll find some way to achieve that.
Absolutely. Kyle, Brady.
Yeah, I was going to say some things are really out of our hands, and that's where the benefit of therapy comes in. And by that I mean, each generation is supposed to do better, right? Follow me on this. Each generation is supposed to do better. So this idea that you're a man, you're supposed to pick up all of these bags and do it. Where did that idea come from, right? So with that idea, think of all the experiences that each and every one of us has gone through, or even our parents, right? Some of our parents have lived through the Jim Crow era, right? So think about unpacking that kind of trauma, and what effects that has had on our upbringing, right? Look at social media. We're exposed constantly to everything from Make America Great Again, Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, everything, police brutality, ongoing shootings, to what you're seeing on the news. I could watch the news for 30 minutes and be completely depressed and in a complete state of fear because it's hitting you back to back to back to back right off the bat with this incident, COVID, threats of bombings, Korea's working on this. All those things create all kind of fear aspects and create anxiety, right? So how do you process all that, right? A lot of people, if you're carrying all those bags, you're just looking and going on about your business. But if you're talking to somebody for support, now you know how to process, now you know how to unpack, and now you have better communication with your family. Now you have better work ethic at work. Now you're not up all night, sleep rolling over with anxiety. Like there are tools to help you process. So that's what I'm saying. Like some things are out of your hands. If you get a diagnosis that you have high blood pressure from your doctor, you go, or you start to feel symptoms of high blood pressure, you go see a doctor and get assistance, right? But if you're having your same symptoms of anxiety or depression, complicated grief, so on and so forth, it would behoove you to come get help, right? So that's what I mean. Some things are out of your hand, and it's best interest to seek that wise counsel that can help you.
Absolutely. And again, when dealing with trauma, you spoke on it pretty much as generational trauma, things that just come in different generations and waves. And a lot of times we try to deal with those traumas on our own or face them with what we think is best. But getting to the root of it is definitely, the challenge right now because sometimes you look around like, how did this start? Where did this come from? I was just born into this society. I was born in this community. This is what I feel. This is what I have to do. Right? If you notice, like when people do make it big and they go, let's say to Hollywood, they become famous and make a lot of money, they return back to where they come from. Some of them, but they don't come back with the intent to help. Some of them come back and still live that same lifestyle and try to, and they end up getting caught up and things kind of derail from there. So it's that generational trauma, it's that generational thinking, and sometimes it's about how we think. And as we're thinking and as we're getting older and growing up, we go through these phases of transition in our mindset. And so there's this word that everybody throws at men called midlife crisis. Uh, and, going through those midlife transitions is what I call it. It does not have to involve calamity, but for some people, it turns into a crisis. So dealing with midlife crisis, it can occur in both women and men. Let's put that out there as well. But it takes a particular form in men facing identity crisis. It often it spills into our family life, and men in midlife crisis feel hopelessness, or they feel trapped in an identity or a lifestyle that they experience, or they feel like it's constraining them to some degree. is fueled by an acute awareness of time passing. So, what do you say to those brothers that are dealing with this right now, or may not even know that they're dealing with it? Things are just happening. What would you say to them, Brandon?
So, I mean, I would say for this one, it's a real thing, right? So first, again, just acknowledging it's a real thing. It's something that can bring about stress. I think too a lot. Like I've done some trainings like with guys who are like much older than I am, and we've talked about this, and so I've gotten some perspective on it, and really a lot of it, like when you talk about that passage of time, it feels like what also goes with the passage of time is the passage of purpose, right? So like you've gotten to this point where so much time has passed that if you haven't reached where you thought you were going to reach or haven't hit that level of purpose, that it's no longer achievable. And so I think a piece of that it's just understanding that your purpose isn't lost through the passage of time, like through, those things happening and you getting older, that your purpose is gone. That you are able to continue to push forward and to achieve some of those things. It is possible to reinvent yourself and do something different, despite getting older in age. All of those things are still available. They just may need to be reframed and may look different, depending on what you're going for. I definitely think talking to a counselor and therapist can help with that, because sometimes we get stuck in this has to look this way in order for it to equal what I want it to mean for me. Like if I want this, if this is what success looks like, if it comes in a different way, it's not success, it's failure. And so for a lot of times for men, it's that black and white. I didn't do this, so I failed. This didn't happen, so I didn't achieve my goals. And so, like, we equate those things, like everything's linear. A lot of things are linear to us. And so in processing that with another person, again, I would say a licensed clinician is best, but even, in talking to some of your friends and family, some other brothers that you have in your space, it can help you as Brother Kyle said earlier, like to think through it in a different way. We are so very much locked into our way of thinking and what those things are, that we aren't able to see it from another angle. And so sometimes it's just what we need. We need somebody, we have this tunnel vision. You just need somebody to just like nudge you in this direction, and there's a whole other space that you couldn't see before that's open to you. And so I would, definitely think through like trying to have those conversations and think through that, and being open to your purpose and what success means and your goals meaning to shift, but still be impactful for your life.
Absolutely. Kyle?
And I just want to normalize like a lot of that, a lot of things that happen, especially I see it in twofold, that midlife reflection stage. And I see it a lot of times with clients that I work with that come home from prison. They kind of both hit that impasse where they do a lot of reflection. And I'm not sure if anybody watched the show on Netflix. I think it comes on TBS also. It's called The Last OG. They do a real good job actually detailing that impasse. And there's a lot of it's about finding yourself, right? And that's where a lot of times you see our brothers and sisters around the age of 40, 50 years old, and like they're refining themselves, or I would call it new identity formation, right? Like, is this who I still want to be? Like, I'm not the guy that wear the baggy jeans and the white t-shirts anymore, but I haven't done this and I haven't done that, and I'm still living in the same community. Method Man's character on that show kind of reminds me of a lot of people who I knew and grew up with that kind of hit that age range and go through that new identity formation. Like, I should have did this, I could have did that. Like, they're reflecting on like things they did, like play football in high school and how they could have done so on and so forth. And the reason why I want to normalize that and kind of speak to that is there's aspects of the social system that impact that, right? Like, you have 43% home ownership among African Americans in Baltimore City, right? So that's the impact, right? 2/3 of African Americans in the city don't have savings that could cover up to 3 months of their expenses if they lose their job, which is happening in coronavirus, during the whole pandemic with the coronavirus. You add that in with, look at our spending with when the stimulus check happened. and how many people are still facing eviction to this day. So when that new identity formation has kicked in, it's not completely wrong to have those feelings, but it's beneficial, like Brandon said, to seek somebody, to talk to somebody about these feelings and really work with a plan and develop a plan to really go with these feelings, to really figure out who you are and who you desire to be.
Yeah, thank you both for that. It was great feedback, especially with midlife transitions. I know there are people probably watching now and thinking like, hey, they just identified some of the things that I'm experiencing, and what can I do to get more support or talk to somebody? And again, you definitely can reach us at the Renaissance Christian Center. And once again, that number is 410-409-0025. You can also go to the website. The website that streams this is Morning Star Baptist Church. I'm quite sure they have the Renaissance link on there as well for our Facebook and social media, our website rather than our social media page. But please reach out. We definitely want to talk to you and help you. And I hope that you're getting something out of this conversation, because this is what's needed. There's a lot of conversations that happen, a lot of different webinars that take place, but really focusing on men and really highlighting some of the things we deal with is important. We need our men, to be around. We don't want anybody, checking out, committing suicide. You don't have to walk around depressed any longer. You have help here. Someone's waiting to speak with you. You don't have to walk around feeling like you're lonely or there's no help out there. There's somebody waiting to talk to you and shift your view, as Brandon said, just a little bit from your tunnel vision to let you know that, hey, there's a whole other world out there that you probably haven't explored or tapped into yet. But in dealing with that, and handling the different types of trauma we experience, people are trying to find themselves, because sometimes, you feel like life may be empty. You may feel inadequate. You may feel the pressure to break out, and you may get desperate. And some people, when you get desperate, sometimes you reach for the wrong things, that you might reach for, they're legalizing it now. I'm glad we don't live in Oregon, because, everybody's getting, free drugs pretty much, it's legalized. They reach for alcohol. They reach for different devices that does not, that don't promote a healthy outcome. Those devices really, cause us to go down a spiral and chain of negative events. So, what do you say to those that are reaching for devices that they think may, do that what I call it, the self-helping or the self-healing process of alcohol or marijuana, etc. What would you say to them, Kyle?
First of all, what brought you there, right? So a lot of times, I learned this years ago, let's say when you smoke weed, right? You smoke weed, your first time you look for a certain feeling, right? Because of social learning, right? And when you don't get that feeling, you're like, oh, I didn't get high. Or when you go to drinking, you didn't get a certain feeling, well, I didn't get the feeling I desired, because you see other people, right? So what gravitated you towards that feeling, right? So really addressing, why is it that you want to do that, right? Like you're not smoking weed because you just want to do it. You know what I mean? Like it's something that led to that behavior, right? Drinking any other drug, opiates, crack cocaine, whatever have you. Like it's something that drew you to that. So really looking into what led you to that feeling. From there, like really unpacking, well, what feeling are you getting that you're desiring to get, and what's that void? Like, because why are you using this to fix that void, and how can we get past this feeling, and how can we fix this void in a more positive manner?
Absolutely. Brandon, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would say with those negative coping skills, one piece of it, one typical aspect of it is that it is very temporary. So the feeling of support and it taking care of the feelings that you have that are due to something underlying, like Kyle said, that is temporary. It will help you in the short term. It will create long term bad habits to help you deal and feel better in a very short period of time. And so I think for us and as men, it takes doing that work to get to the root and figure out what's going on to heal. I feel like, I mean, those negative coping strategies can be bandages to what's hurting you, but at a certain point, bandages wear off. Bandages fall off. They don't stay on long. And Kyle knows this. He has kids. If they got kids, they stay on even shorter. But you have those short-term things that can help you for a bit. But if we focus on the healing, it can help you long-term, that you won't need to feel the need or the pressure to gravitate towards that. Life is difficult. Life is hard. And so being able to develop positive coping skills can help you for a number of situations that may come up. Healing and figuring out where that trauma is coming from that's making you want to go there, like Kyle said, that's healing. Those are long term ways for us to feel better. Whereas these negative coping skills, they don't. They're very temporary. They're often expensive. They're often dangerous. They're often habit producing. So they come with so much baggage. It will help you. It maybe help you feel better for a little bit, but it's not worth the weight that it's going to add, to your life long term. And healing, if we put healing in place of that, we'll get to a point where um, we don't need to rely on those, and we'll have the positive coping skills that we can just apply when other stuff comes up, and we can have these as a part of our toolkit as we kind of move forward with life.
Yeah, and also the usage, like substance abuse or alcohol, it becomes a crutch, right? So eventually, you're not even processing the problem that you were trying to fix. You're just dumping in and filling just that void for that moment. And before you know it, you have one, like, look at it like a snowball effect. Eventually, you have this huge boulder, and it's just rolling downhill. And now you just have a growing complication.
Indeed. And for those who are watching, we are offering free sessions for Baltimore City and Baltimore County residents. So if you're listening tonight, please, you'll see some information in the chat on where you can call or where you can reach us. We're offering free sessions for Baltimore County and Baltimore City residents. It's interesting because when you think about, alcohol, and you think about this pandemic, when everything began to, kind of shut down early on, a lot of things closed down. Churches couldn't have capacity of membership. Restaurants were kind of shut down at one point and then opened up for outdoor dining. But one place that did not shut down was the bar. I believe some places call it the Spirits. And that, if you look at, I didn't do any statistics. I don't know if you have any, Kyle, but I know at one point I was looking and they were saying like there was an influx of alcohol increase for sales in regard to that, and then the marijuana clinics were still open because, you have some here in Maryland where there's a drive-through, and they were wrapped around the building like they were at Chick-fil-A. So people were, really dumping and pouring into themselves, those negative vices, looking for a way to get to escape for a moment, not realizing that they're creating a long-term impact on their bodies, and that could really lead them away from, the point that they were trying to do in the beginning of trying to find a way out. So I think it's important, to really look at those. I know a lot of people turn to alcohol because of the feel-good method, but it definitely does have some internal impact on you later on. And I just want to encourage you tonight, for those who are listening, to not take that road and really reach out and talk to somebody. I know that it's tough. I know we try to find your way back. I know some people may have even hit rock bottom even now listening to us, and you may have taken, that step of drinking and smoking and making that, your crutch. But you don't have to stay that way. You have an opportunity tonight to reach out to us. We're here. We would love to talk to you and, really just have a conversation to help you, get back on track to the place that you're trying to get to. A lot of that, as we talked about earlier, can be generational trauma. Some of it can just be peer pressure. There's a such thing as called adult pressure as well. And sometimes, men face adult pressure, trying to keep up with, their boys or the Joneses and so forth. So one of you, whoever want to take this one, I'm going to toss this one up. How do you handle dealing with that, where you're trying to keep up with your neighbor or keep up with, your colleague and your boy, when it comes to that adult peer pressure?
My answer is always why, or how did you arrive here, right? I know that's been an answer I used a lot tonight, but as I've gotten older, that's something I've always looked at, like what led to that desire. Like, what's that? The PS4 and the new Xbox that came out, PS5. Sorry, so somebody's gonna correct me on that. But like you have these systems, and like you have these phones. I still have the basic iPhone X, and you have you see the face you made? Like there's a lot of like there's people who have to get the new everything, right?
Android for life.
And they have to okay.
That sounded petty, Kyle.
I am who I am, right? but you know, like there's people that have to have the new everything, right? And that's a void that they try to fill, or that's an image that they want to keep up. I have this, I have that, and that's fine if you can sustain that, right?
Mhm.
But if you can't sustain it, it's problematic, and that's where you see a lot of the problems come in, right? Like, oh, I have to buy this. Well, where are you getting the money from? Well, I could rob Peter to pay Paul, or the credit card comes in and you can't make that payment, so on and so forth. And that's where when it becomes problematic, that's why I say the therapy piece comes in. But the have and desire nice things. I used to be a sneakerhead. I used to be a huge sneakerhead, right? So I used to love buying all the Jordans. ACGs was my joint. Like I used to love buying them. Like that was my thing, right? But when it became problematic after I got married, you know, like can't go off and buy that because we have bills. And then baby number 1, 2, and 3 came, becomes problematic. Can't throw that money in the toilet like that. Same thing with video games. I love my Call of Duties and my Maddens and my 2Ks. Come holla at me. But you know, like when it becomes problematic and you still going through with it, then it's a problem. Then that's when it becomes an addiction, right? But I'm one of those type of people that say keeping up with the Joneses for some people, that's their identity. But once it becomes problematic, that's when it becomes an addiction to something more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean yeah. Kyle hit it. You know, figuring out the why, like why you're doing that, why you feel the need to do it. And also I think one of the things that helps with that is you being 100% comfortable with yourself. So
Mm.
like if you have that pressure from, you know, if it's from family, you know, why do you feel the need to keep up with it? And, you know, can you get to a point that you're comfortable with yourself to say, I don't need to do that? Because a lot of times with family it's expectations. With friends it's things that we, you know, will do or we won't do. Society has expectations, like there are all those things to do too. I feel like racism and stereotypes comes into that too, because they feel like, you know, because you're a black man, you have to have this or be a certain way, all that kind of stuff. Like there's all that stuff there. You know, once you get comfortable and feel more comfortable with yourself, you don't necessarily feel the need to do that unless it's a reasonable desire. Like Kyle said with, you know, him being a sneakerhead. If you can do that and that's what you want to do, like that's fine. If that's within reason. There's nothing, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like I feel like that's you know, a perfect thing to do. And I feel like we all have those things that we desire and want to do. It's, is this coming from something that you want that's giving you pleasure, or is this something that you're doing to appease someone else or to try to fit in or have society look at you a certain way? I think those are reasonable questions, and once we, you know, figure that out and, you know, you're able to diagnose what that is and you're, you know, comfortable in doing that and doing that within reason, that it's not becoming an addictive behavior, and I think that there's ways to manage that.
Absolutely. So a couple of questions that come in real quick. One of them is um, how to get into a safe space in their life. A person wants to know how could they, I guess, get into a safe space in their life. I'm assuming they're talking about mentally. Um, and as men, why are we always comparing ourselves to the next brother? Who wants to take that one? Brandon?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Um, so the comparison one, that's
Yeah.
okay. So I mean, again, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. If, you know, like if you're good with yourself, like I don't think that it has to be anything that's competitive. I feel like friendly competition, if you're using like, oh, my man did this, like he, you know, just bought a house, and you're using that as, you know, friendly competition of like, I'm using this to internally motivate me to clean up my credit or to save more. That's fine as long as you're not angry with that person or mad at that brother for his success, but you're like, hey, like he could do that. Like I should be able to do that too. Like let me use it in a positive way. But if it's something that's causing you to, it's creating envy, it's creating anger, it's creating frustration, then it's not healthy. And so I think of, of those kind of situations as if I can use it to motivate me to do something, to do something fantastic, then great, then do that. But otherwise, think about why you're looking for that. Like Kyle says, that why again, like why are you looking for that? Like why are you comparing yourself to this person? And a lot of that, like, is that society telling you that you have to? Do they have something that society told you that you have to have in order to be a successful man? And if it is, and that's not something you desire, then learn and think through how you can shift that energy into something that you want to do, or a goal that you personally that you personally set. I think we unintentionally are, we create adversarial relationships with people in our minds. Like there's no, like, we don't need to compete. We're not competing, but for some reason, you know, society tells us that they have something that we don't have or that I don't have, so I have to, not like that person. And I think kind of again getting to the why and thinking those things through can help you um in that scenario.
Also, I just want to add in, just as a society, because you kind of touched on it, Brandon. As a society, we're kind of always put up against each other, in general. Prime examples: LeBron James and Michael Jordan, or Michael Jordan and Kobe, Michael Jackson and Prince, Tupac and Biggie, Nas and Jay-Z. We even have a popular thing on social media that we look forward to all the time called Versus. Like literally called Versus, where we put
Right.
people against each other, their catalogs against each other. You know what I mean? Even back in the day, there was Aretha Franklin, and you know what I mean? Like it's a common thing where we're always placed against each other and amongst our people. Like even, oh, we have the best church, and you know what I mean? It's you know what I mean? You always hear that whenever you go wherever, you know what I mean? As a people. So I could understand why the brother asked that question, because that is something that's constant, even in the workplace. I don't know, like I think it should be great where we celebrate each other more often. Like Brandon and I, we hit it off pretty early, because we wanted to celebrate each other. Like we bonded, we saw, you know what I mean? That should be a thing that's more so done, but for whatever reason it's not. So I get that. And the other brother asked a question about when do you get to a place of peace? Was that what he said?
Um, a safe place in life.
A safe place in life. I would say, what do you think when you're at a place of stillness? When you're alone to yourself and your mind's not racing, and at some point in time, I'm sure that you was at a place in your mind, and you was at a place of stillness, and you didn't have those racing thoughts or flooded with different ideas or different feelings, and reflecting on certain things. So what transpired from that place till now, and like really working at back?
That was all great feedback, exactly. And I think, when you think about it, it's all around communication. And sometimes, I don't know if it's a stigma or a stereotypic comment, but some people feel like men don't communicate as well enough, where they're understood. Men are known to shut down and suppress their feelings and emotions, to some degree. And this is our last conversation around this. What would you say to someone who is listening that says, "Hey, my dad, my husband, my uncle, my son, they don't speak to me, they don't talk. I ask them a question, they shut down, or they just go into complete silence." What would you say to that person listening? How can they gauge communication from that individual? And Brandon, you could take that one. Then Kyle, you could jump in.
I would say first and foremost, figure out if you're listening non-judgmentally. If you're listening to the point that you can take in information and not necessarily have the answer, or not necessarily want to diagnose what the issue is, and not necessarily providing unsolicited advice and information. A lot of time when people are, or when we're talking to people, it's a natural thing that we want to help. It's a natural thing that we want to get in there with the person and try to fix everything. Sometimes if we're talking, sometimes we just want to say how we feel and this is what's going on and drop it. And sometimes it may be very quick. It may not be, for us as men, it may not be a long, like we're holding each other's hands and we're going into all the deepest parts of it. It's not always like that. Sometimes it's, it is casual. Sometimes we may say something as a joke. Like sometimes like we communicate. I don't think we communicate poorly. In some regards, we do because a lot of us were brought up that way. We were brought up, because we want to make sure that you're strong enough to deal with the world and the reality of the world that's out there, and that where Black men aren't looked at in the best light, and there is racism and discrimination. So you want to make yourselves tough. So a lot of it is, kind of learned behavior. But then there's this other part of, at different times in our lives, I'm sure every brother can think of a time where you went out on a limb and said something that like was a little painful for you. You said it, and then the response was just like, "I will never do that again." Like that's not going to happen again, and you become more guarded, right? And so I think for people wanting to have patience with us, it takes a while. Like we're not always going to jump in with a 4-page letter about what's going on. Just be open and let that person know that you are a safe space, and then they can choose the time where they need the safe space. It doesn't have to be you asking them every day. It's just like, I want to let you know I'm here for you. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to jump in with, with all my thoughts and opinions. I just want to make sure that you know that this is a place that you can engage with when you need to. And then a lot of times, like we may hit that wall of just like, again, it may not just be like, yes, I'm ready to sit down and have that conversation. It may just be like, you throw something out at dinner or throw something out with a joke or something comes on the news and you slide something in there. And then be okay with that. Like, if that's all they have in that day, there's no need to, continue to probe, just patience because a lot of us are unlearning behaviors that we were taught for our survival that we don't know that we're doing it that way and that the communication for you is frustrating. We just know we're still trying to be guarded. We're still trying to be protective of ourselves. So that patience and just letting people know whenever you're ready, I'm here, I think is a really good step.
I would just say, just be careful of defensive conversations. Remember, it's not about you, especially when you're trying to get somebody to talk to you. Again, by saying it's not about you, just remember defensive conversation, stay away from it. Humility, just come to a place of, hey, look, I don't know all the answers, but I'm here for you and I'm willing to talk to you, hear you out, to hear you through. And worst kind of worst, just say, hey, look, explore if this person wants to talk to these problems with somebody else and not you. Like, encourage them just not to shut down. Like that's the main thing. Like them not talking to you might not be the worst thing if they're able to talk to somebody else. And one-on-one time. Try not to make it into a thing where other people are around. Like try to really talk to that person, that loved one, really one-on-one.
And what Kyle just said, just real quick, keep it between that one-on-one. Mm-hmm. Sharing it and giving it to somebody else and then get back to that person may destroy that trust, period. So when Kyle said that made me think about it, but that part too.
And you know what else helps? Changing the setting. Like maybe talking to them in the bedroom or kitchen might not be the best place.
Right.
Like this sounds crazy, but maybe a miniature golf course, like just doing something different. Like maybe at just playing a game of 50, like, at the basketball court, or playing around on the bench press, like just like changing the setting can sometimes change how somebody just did that comfort level of talking about something.
Great feedback. It's definitely, you actually hit on something I don't even have to answer the question on, but you kind of said it. Someone asked, how do you overcome pride? And you said humility. It's being humble, not having to, be right all the time, not having to have all the answers. Riding on the wings of humility is definitely a key. And I think it's important for us to recognize, we have some opportunities within ourselves that, we can do better. We all can. Nobody's perfect, right? But we definitely want to, acknowledge, hey, these are some areas that I struggle in. These are some areas that I need to, I can be better at, and I need some support. And it's okay to not feel like you have to have the answers or feel like you have to fix everything. I think it's just important to be humble, ride on the wings of humility as much as you can, and really, like you say, change the scenery, have that conversation. Go to miniature golf. I don't know if I want to take nobody to the basketball court because that could be competitive. you know, that game might turn out a little differently, but no, it should be all in fun. But I do want to say thank you to both of you tonight for joining us. I think this has been a great conversation. Thank you for all those who have watched us. I know there's a lot of questions that came in. We kind of answered them all, and we kind of had conversations along the way. So as we're closing out, real quick, we'll start with Kyle, then we'll go to Brandon, we'll end. Just give maybe like two or three different practices of self-care that men can do that are feeling stressed or dealing with some things that we talked about tonight.
I'm a big sayer of fishing. Fishing is definitely good. It's good meditation. It's you versus nature. I'm thinking of things that you could do right now in the time of COVID, right?
Absolutely. Relevant.
Riding your bike is some great weather outside right now. I love meditation and working out. I mix the two of them together with lifting weights and stuff. But really getting some time in, you do that, and if that doesn't work, jog. Those things are very helpful as far as self-care.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry. I would say, for this, I think also one of the things to do with this, I agree with the meditation wholeheartedly. Like, I think that's something, again, you can find those things on YouTube, some different ways to meditate and to kind of center yourself and be with your own thoughts. I think another one is, trying to encourage yourself and, let yourself know that you're valuable. Like, I even put on this shirt today that says I am enough, like, because oftentimes as men, we don't feel that way. We have a society that tells us that we're not every single day. Like, it's a, it can be a struggle. I think, letting yourself know, reminding yourself that you're able to, that you're great, that you're doing the best that you can, that you've accomplished some things. And to something what Kyle said earlier, like, celebrate everything, celebrate the small victories, like give yourself a pat on the back. Like, it's okay to do that, because oftentimes if you don't, nobody else will. And if you have people in your circle, like celebrating other people, like Kyle was right. We picked up on that. Like, that's my brother in this space. And so anything that he does, I'm cheering for him and vice versa. And so, like, doing those things and finding joy in other people's accomplishments and the little things that you checked off your list. If you have a list of 3 things you got to do in a day and you knock them out, boom, like you did it. Like, that's a successful day. So doing that as well. And another thing I would just add is just a lot of men don't like to do this, but journaling can be a good way to help. And I think you can do it in different ways, even if it's at the end of a day, like writing down, 2 or 3 things that went well today. Just something like that. And then you can kind of figure out too, that can help you figure out what to do for self-care. Like, hey, like every time I said I had a good day, this was involved. Like, I did this, like I watched, this show, or, watched this movie, or I worked out for an hour. Like, I rode my bike, like Kyle said, I talked to this person, like I talked to my friend or my family member. Like, and figuring that out, then you can go like, hey, I'm having a bad day. Let me go to something that helped me feel better on a good day. So those would be some of the things I would put out.
Yes, and to tie it all in together, you need somebody to talk to. We're here at the Renaissance Christian Counseling Center. Once again, our number is 410-409-0025. Please reach out to us. If you don't know any coping ways to cope with what you're dealing with, we're here to talk. If you feel like you're at a place where you just feel like giving up, please don't give up, because we're here to support you. We're here to talk to you, and we would love to hear from you. So thank you again, Kyle. Thank you again, Brandon, for this healthy conversation for our brothers and men. And we just say thank you all for those who are watching. And please reach out to us. We'll be there ready, standing by to take your calls. So thank you all. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you next time.